go to duplicate screen and then you won't have to see.
Is a slide show.
Okay. What is happening? Are we?
It's 10, but it's not opening up here, translation. Perhaps you could try
Does it show? It says it's sharing.
Yeah, it is sharing, but not yet in slideshow. Try click again the slideshow tab.
Show.
Thank you. Over to you.
That's it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we can rock and roll. Good morning again, everybody. It's a pleasure again to be on this platform of the National School of Government. As indicated earlier, I've had the opportunity in presenting on the board course, on the board induction course. And this time with the instruction of the principal was not necessarily to make it very technical, but to try and bring in a human element into this conversation, because it is human beings, after all, that have to serve on these leadership structures. So when invited to talk about a subject, and in this particular case, leading with purpose, and moving from success to significance, especially in the public sector, I always feel challenged because it also forces me to reflect on whether I think I qualify to talk about the topic. Because I do believe that we all have a responsibility to define our purpose when entrusted with any role or responsibility, especially of leadership. So if by the time a leadership role is assigned to one of us and we have not clearly articulated our purpose in our minds and hearts, it does indeed become an inflection point of saying, by the way, as I now have the responsibility of leading people and leading assignments, what indeed is my purpose? So it really pushes and forces you, and hopefully most of us being entrusted with the responsibility of leading in the public sector, we have come to that inflection point of pausing and pondering, around, so what is my purpose and why am I here? And especially in the public sector, because I always find it is not much of a position of power, as sometimes we feel it is, but it is more a responsibility and also an honor in being in the public sector. So thank you for the opportunity to talk about this subject. So if I can then, speak about the whole issue of purpose. For me, in this reflection, I had to think about how my purpose has evolved, and my past actually has helped me to define my purpose. So in the area of profession that I'm in 1880, that was the first time the Institute of Chartered Accountants was launched in South Africa. And only 30 years later was the first female chartered accountant, Elizabeth Kruger, allowed. And I say allowed because it had been years of her applying to be a member, and it was closed to women. It's only in 1880, in fact, 37 years later, or rather in 1917, 37 years later, after 1880, was she allowed to be a member. And it took another 70 years, so to speak, but it was exactly 70 years for the first Black female chartered accountant to be a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, when Nonkululeko, as the first Black woman chartered accountant in this country, graced us and opened the doors and made it possible for some of us to believe that it is indeed possible. And that is when I had the honor, a few years later, about 8 years, after 4 attempts at the board exam in becoming a chartered accountant, did I qualify in 1995 as a chartered accountant. I think for me, it is important to highlight that it was after 4 attempts of this grueling exam did I then become a CA, a Black woman chartered accountant in this country. And it was at this point that the values that my single mother had instilled in me had to come in play. Yes, they further got refined, but the values of patience, tenacity, resilience, hard work, respect, humility, but I think most importantly was to continue doing the right thing, because it meant keep at the task and keep doing what is right, because the results will then come to fruition. And that, to a large extent, then shaped my purpose. How it continued to shape my purpose was the realization that even as hard as I had to work as self, somebody had opened the door. There are people who had charted the way at the wake of our democracy, because when I qualified in 1995, it was really at the neck of our democracy in 1994 that I was able to pursue a journey like this. That is what then shaped my passion for the public sector, because immediately after qualifying and I had finished my training at Deloitte, I developed the passion of being in the public sector, because I felt that it is the government that of the day that had made it possible for me as a Black person, as a woman in this country, to be able to come into mainstream of the economy and qualify as a chartered accountant. The public sector at the time, so I'm sharing here with you because most of my career has been in the public sector, whether as an executive in Transnet, at PRASA, or non-executive assignments, but the public sector has been the area where one felt that for me to live a purpose of giving back, I needed to be in the public sector. And at the time, we all know that it was, the public sector was the best employer in this country. We've been there. If we look at some of the Black professionals in this country that have gone and done amazing things in the wider economy, most of them were given meaningful positions in the public sector for the first time. You talk of Sizwe Masana, who was at Telkom. You talk of Saki Macozoma at Transnet. You talk of Mos Ngwasheng, who was the advisor to the president and economic advisor. You talk of Priscilla Mabelane, who her first job was at Eskom as an accountant up to a GM and went to become a CEO of BP South Africa and now just stepped down as a vice president at Sasol. You talk of Thulani Gcabashe, you talk of Gloria Sirobe. So these were our role models in the public sector. And that is where the honor of serving in the public sector grew for us as Black professionals. It is at this time that even as one was navigating a journey in the public sector, knowing that you are shaping the nation, you are shaping the country, and also because the public sector was trailblazing in giving Black professionals, and I keep saying meaningful responsibilities, because those were not token assignments. And even up to today, the responsibilities in the public sector are those that allow one person to make an impact and know that you are touching people's lives. And being in the role of finance most of the time, one of the things that used to grip me was the anxiety and the fear of saying, dare I fail? Because I am handling the purse of the country through the state-owned entities. I am handling monies that do not belong to me. That used to be one of my highest anxieties when I was in the public sector, because I knew that the person in the streets' livelihood, I am one of the people who contribute towards that, and it is dependent on me. It may have a slight ego issue there, but I think for me, it was actually that fear that used to grip me in making sure that how do you walk in the public sector? How do you handle what is not yours? Because it is not mine. It belongs to the rest of South Africans. That used to be at the core of my journey in the public sector. And during that time, talking about the issue of purpose and knowing the challenge that one faced in trying to become a chartered accountant, when we discussed the issue of purpose, that is when in 2002, when there were still about 20 Black women CAs, we formed, together with a few other Black women CAs, we formed a network, the African Women Chartered Accountants. And the purpose back then was a continuous giving back, to say we can't be content in having just a few of us. How do we go back where we came from to make sure that we motivate, mentor, and make sure that the number of Black women chartered accountants in this country grows? And that is when AWCA was formed. And we focused mainly at the time at the number of Black women CAs. I must say that when you actually, and I'll share in the next slide, when you look at the work that we ended up having to do as AWCA, it ended up going beyond just numbers, because we started seeing the impact we were having in growing the number of Black women CAs. And you can see it and you can feel it in our country, that a number of young women professionals have become chartered accountants. And that is a lot of work that was done by those who had gone ahead. In 2008, we then realized that how do we preserve the legacy of AWCA? Because non-profit organizations, the professional networks, we depended a lot on corporates who will go cap in hand and looking for donations and sponsorships in rolling out the programs that we wanted to roll out. That is what informed the formation of AWCA Investment Holdings, which was the investment arm that was at the wake of BE in the country. In fact, BE had come and been embedded, and we looked at this as an opportunity. We were also chasing our professional or full-time roles elsewhere, and AIH, as we then called it, became a passive Black women investment holding company, because we still wanted to continue and be executives somewhere else. it is after a while, where in fact in 2012, after I had to leave the public sector, sadly, where we have to put hand to heart and say the love of my life, it's actually at the moment not working. So in 2012 was my last full-time job at PRASA as the CFO, when I had to pack my bags and have my back at the public sector, at my back, sadly. But what happened at the time was that I managed to then go and run AIH on a full-time basis. And that is when we realized the importance of not only being passive, women investment holdings where you'd be content with the 1% and up to a 5% at the time, but where you actually do meaningful investments. And that is when in 2018, we launched a private equity fund where we will have our own funds that we are able to actually invest in the companies that we're identifying and do BE meaningfully. Because where we were vendor financed, BE was not meaningful, because you'll find that the companies, if they are the ones who are also paying for your very same shareholding in their own companies, we found that issues of governance and also challenging and growing those businesses worked very slowly, because you would be seeing, and it will be as if they've done a favor for you, because your shareholding has been vendor financed by the very same company you are actually trying to bring change and transform. So the private equity fund for us was quite a defining moment, because we were then able to have our own funding that we can invest in the companies that we were identifying. So over the years, we saw the quality of the investments growing, where, as you can see on the screen, these are the investments that we own as AIH. But what was important for us as AIH is knowing that these are investments that we do in order to grow financial inclusivity, because AIH is a broad-based women investment company, and through the investments that we make, we empower women. We actually make change, we impact women and uplift women through the investments that we make, because 10% of distributable returns, distributable profits of AIH go to AWCA, the NPO, such that it will be an endowment for AWCA, and that AWCA will last sustainably for years, even when some of us are no longer around. That was the main purpose of actually forming the investment holding company, and making sure that it is not just for wealth creation for us as shareholders, but there's a significant portion that is going to go on the programs that are run by AWCA. So when you actually talk about leading, so you can lead for success. And that is where the whole story of AIH came in, because one could have formed an investment company that you just run from your own business, where it is just for yourself. But the importance of leading with purpose and leading for significance is different when you just lead for success, because you are leading self. It is important to start leading self. There is a space for that. It is the stepping stone. I'm not saying we should not focus on leading self, because you cannot lead others when you are unable to lead yourself. You cannot want to preside over people, like how the young generation now immediately want to, Cicinda, I also want to be on the boards you're in. Cicinda, oh, I want to be a CFO, immediately, without having to go through the steps of first managing themselves, yet we want to go and manage other people. Leading self and who you are, understanding first, who am I? What are my strengths? What are my passions? Where can I make an impact that is lasting, utilizing the skills that I have? And that is where it becomes important in honing in knowledge, getting the qualifications, so that when we are given these roles of responsibility in the public sector in particular, which was a very poignant issue for the first few decades of us being in our democracy, where your qualifications, your competences was what was critical before you can actually be deployed into into the roles that we take on today. So leading self is important. Who am I? How do I show up? What are my qualifications? Do I qualify for the roles that I am coming in? Because when those are honed in, then you can work towards success and hold the right responsibilities and the titles and the positions. But again, in these titles, it is still about ourselves, where titles are what drive us. Yes, nothing is wrong with the titles, but I also had a very, I'll say, important lesson in my life, which today I look back and I call it as a gift. Because as a young professional in the public sector, as a CFO of Transnet, it was very interesting to see at the time where most banks in the country will call you and even know you at first name basis. I experienced firsthand being a CFO of Transnet, and the following day, when you're no longer a CFO of Transnet, how human beings treated you. I had an opportunity of learning that, Cindy, do not show up in the world as a CFO. Do not show up in the world through your title, but show up as Cindy. Show up as a human being who will impact people through who you are before even people know what you do and what you are. And as much as our titles are critical for success, or success then leads to us getting our titles, because through them, it's because we've demonstrated the qualifications, we've demonstrated we are intelligent, we can do what we do, and we feel we can be famous and create wealth through us leading self and being successful. Again, no harm in that. We can end up living our livelihoods where we are able to provide for ourselves and our families and have financial independence and be self-sufficient. And what it also does is that success can allow us choices, which we probably never had when we actually, with the background that we have, especially most of us in our Black families, where we have all grown up in environments, in very difficult environments. So when we become successful for ourselves or our immediate families, no harm with that, because we can then start impacting those immediately close to us. However, we all know that once that has been done, so what? When I'm successful, I'm a CEO, when I've created wealth for myself, so what? As Albert Schweitzer said, success is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success, because if you love what you are doing, you will be successful. And the reason why I say this is because with our choices, that when we have gone and acquired knowledge and are able to be appointed to some of the roles that we're appointed in, sometimes we can feel that we have now arrived, and we treat ourselves and others close to us as if we've arrived and we are the ones in power. But so what? Are we then fulfilled with that? Because it actually thereafter, we have also noticed that sometimes our success cannot necessarily be what gives us the contentment as human beings. Immediately after one possession, we say we want the next. You buy this car and say, I now need the next car. I buy this house and then I need the next house, and I'm not happy. I'm immediately after moving into the big house that is bigger, I'm starting to look at the next one, and I'm saying, by the way, I need the next one. And that is some of the things, that materialism that has crept into us and has shrouded the role and the responsibility that we are meant to bring, especially in the public sector, where our goals are about what is my next amount that I'm making by being in the procurement space? How much can I make? It is now my turn to make so much money. And the question is that once that is achieved, so what? I think it was what was it Picasso who also said, I wanted the next. He said, after I had shoes, I wanted a bicycle. After the bicycle, I wanted a car. And he says, until I saw a man with no feet. Because again, we are busy, we are gripped with amassing wealth and wanting certain things in life, but which do not necessarily, at the end of the day, bring us the fulfillment that we are meant to have as human beings. So how do we then try and transcend that? What is the bigger cause? What is the bigger thing? And that is when you say, yes, it is important to lead for success, but what becomes important is leading for significance. When you start saying, it's not just about me. Surely I'm not here just to be Cindy for Cindy and it all ends there. Leading others. And hence it was important to still be able to hone in some of the skills, some of the qualifications if that is needed, because you can also not raise your hand without them. However, once you've had them, you start asking yourself, in these roles we are given, why are you there? And start having clarity of purpose for ourselves. And that is when, on a regular basis, we then start saying, how am I impacting the next person through the role that and the responsibility that I've been given? When every morning you are gripped with that. And that is what differentiates between the qualities. I mean, when you've got qualifications, because they can open the doors, but the quality of the person, the characteristics, is what would determine how far you can go as an individual and the impact that you have. Because we can be intelligent and have the knowledge, which is externally acquired most of the time. But what needs to be built from inside out, where you have to work on self and how you show up in the world, that is when you start honing in your intellect and your wisdom, because the information you have, that is why one of my coaches would use an example of, you can find a well-educated doctor in your street being the worst drunkard and cannot live and make an impact, not just for himself, not even for his family, but for the rest of the community, but becomes a lost cause. So qualifications are a stepping stone, but for us to live meaningfully, it takes more than that. So for us to live a life where every morning we ask ourselves, why are we in the roles we are in? It is about us looking at the values which most of the time have to be grounded in our upbringing, in our families. And for most of us who are parents, where you start asking yourself, what am I role modeling with my children? Because it's also not about what leaders say. It is what about leaders do. It is not about what you say as a parent. It's not about what you say as a chairman of a board. It's not what you say as a director. But employees in an organization look at how you walk, your life in society, your impact in society, the values and how you live your life. That becomes important, and that is how you start becoming of impact. When you yourself start challenging yourself on a regular basis in how you show up, where you start becoming very uncomfortable with mediocrity and are becoming intentional in saying, when people call your name, what do they associate with your name? When people say Cindy Mabaso Koyani, what do they associate with your name? Do they associate corruption? Do they associate a leader? Do they associate a champion for transformation? What gets associated with your name? We live in a country and in a world where everybody is so conscious about building my brand. And everybody wants to be out there on a daily basis saying things. But the question is, what are you doing that naturally then builds your brand? Like how when we were forming AWCA, it was honestly being driven by, we just wanted to go back to the schools where we were, because we stumbled onto the CA profession. We stumbled at university that if I had not done maths higher grade, I would not have been able to do BCom. No one had told me that at school. So it started with something that small to say, let's go back to our schools and tell young people that please do maths higher grade. And you can come across this profession, which we did not even know anything about. So it is the intentionality that when you wake up every morning and say, so today, how am I impacting others? And others can even be with your own children. But how am I impacting others? How am I walking today to align with what I had been saying? Because what I say has to align with how I am walking. And where you start being fulfilled, not because of your own successes, not because of your own fame, not because of your own title, but when you start getting fulfilled, when you see the number of Black women CAs in the country that was 2% when we started AWCA in 2002, to be sitting at 15%, not just through our own doing, but through a collaboration where within SAICA, within companies, within the banks that employ CAs, within the audit firms, where we started being intentional and working with them in bringing the number of Black women CAs to grow. And then we started realizing that it can't just be about the number, especially when you started seeing some governance breaches, when you started seeing corruption being undertaken under the name of chartered accountants, under the name of Black women chartered accountants, it started paining us. And one of the things we started doing in AWCA, we are no longer focused on the number of Black women CAs. We are focusing on the quality of the Black women chartered accountant. When people talk about Black women CAs in our country, what comes to mind? It mustn't be about the lady who appeared on TV and spoke about fat cooks, because that made our job very difficult when we went to schools to entice Black women, Black girls to say, become a chartered accountant. It took away the nobility of the profession, and our work became harder, because at that point, we realized the importance of working on more ethical leadership than just the number of people who are holding titles, but how do they then show up when they're in these roles? To say, you are in this role, so what? You sit at the table as a director, so what? Do people feel in your organization that there is a Black leader there, there is a Black woman there, there is someone who looks like, there's someone who cares about transformation, there is someone who mentors young women, young people? When young women come to present to your board, do you try to demonstrate how much you know as a board member and belittle that young CA, a CFO who's trying to present, and you try to demonstrate how much you know better than them, instead of hand-holding them. When you see something that is wrong in their pack, do you call them before the meeting and say to them, I'm making you aware that there is this thing that I'm finding. Can you clarify it? Rather than you bracing yourself to show up and undermine them and belittle them just because you are a board member. And those are things that some of us also did not learn because we are better. But I've been an executive before I became a board member, and I knew how it landed. When the one who looked like me was the one who tried very hard to show me out. When the one whom I thought would at least hold my hand and say, young girl, when I was young, this is how I think you need to, show up. It was hard when there were few of us because you stumbled and had to wake up on your own. Today, there are few of us, and our responsibility, when you're now not the only one, where there can be a few of you on the board that say, your duty is to make sure that this young executive who comes to present to your board, by the time your term is over, they need to know how much they learned from you. Not more fear you, but more respect you. So those are some of the things that we start showing up with significance. And the reason why I shared Dr. Chris Barnard, Nelson Mandela at the bottom, and Graham Flag and Francois Deslander is because, again, that is where the difference becomes between success and significance. Because Dr. Chris Barnard, as again, one of the philosophers whom I follow, shared, what makes the difference between a class of doctors where one person becomes the first one to go and do a heart transplant? What makes the difference in a class of engineering and only one or two people have the vision to go and design the Eurotunnel, which is what Fag and Deslander did? What makes the difference between a large number of human beings, politicians who've been through a hard and difficult time and are able 27 years down the line to come out and forgive and lead with compassion and lead from the heart and not be driven by the pain and the baggage and the anger that sometimes we justify ourselves? 30 years down the line, we still say, oh yes, because this is what apartheid did to us. 30 years down the line, we still want to hand over power to others. What makes that person different in that full class? And I guess maybe that is an answer you can share within yourself or maybe with others. It becomes the quality of the human being, the characteristics, which is beyond the qualifications, because all of them would have been doctors. But one person in that class had to find it necessary. How do I make sure that people just don't die from heart attacks, that we are able to save them? How do I make sure that instead of plunging a country, into a collapse, that actually we can have a transition that is peaceful? How do we make sure that we can still make travel easier within, continentally, within countries, rather, within in a continent? So those are some of the things to say we can all have qualifications, but how we then, what makes the difference? Where you then go beyond your call of duty and say, here, when I leave, something needs to be standing that will be associated with my name. Somebody, even if it's not something that is seen by the whole world, who will speak of, this is the person who actually held my hand and made an impact in my life. And that is how we then grow from success to significance. And Prof, you'll guide me around time. So it is indeed about leading with purpose, is defining that purpose. We define purpose for the companies where we are board members. We are very quick in what's the vision, the mission of this this company. Have we done it for ourselves? Because that also drives us. Which companies do you say yes to when they are hiring you? because you ask yourself, which boards do you say yes to? You know, who is the chair? Can I be associated with the image of that organization? And yes, sometimes maybe you will be the one who walks in intentionally and say, maybe this is the contribution that I can make. But those things are very important to say, you yourself, you start walking a life that is very clear, has clarity, once you have also defined your own purpose. And it then that you ground your own values, you know, on certain things that you are saying, strategically, this won't work for me. Because in strategies that we also create, we are very clear to say, this is my strategy, this is what I'm going to do between now in short, medium, long term. But how much do we also make it clear to ourselves and those who walk with us and those who also see us from far to say that so and so will never do, that so and so will not do, that I will not do because it does not fall within my value system, my strategy. And not to say that anybody is perfect, because when you see how many of Black professionals have been tripped in the public sector, I've always said that for me, it was God's grace, because the line was also very thin, where you could have easily landed in hot water, and as people will say, and your career will be doomed. Surely we can bring this back, considering where our country was before, where people cannot see a professional in the public sector and feel sorry for you, to say it's either your career will be doomed when you leave there because of what's happening at the moment. And that is where we look up to the leaders, you know, our political leaders as well, to assist us, because right now it's an area of fear, where professionals say, I am scared to go to the public sector because you will leave there with your profession, with your name being tarnished. And so these are some of the things that at the moment we would like to be driven by the passion, where in the past, we know that we've had to take jobs because we had to put bread on the table, because you want the pay. I think over time, you know, we need to be able to follow our passion and say, I am passionate about education, so I will be a teacher because that is my passion, and not only be driven by how much I want to earn, and because you've got the choices. And I know that is usually a very, very tight and a tension that we continuously have to, you know, walk in as we live lives in difficult circumstances. But again, in a country as rich as ours, we would like to be able to know that the basics get taken care of, and that people are allowed to make an impact in areas of their passion, where somebody like a Sizwe Masane can feel that once I can be a successful corporate person, but I will go back to school and study to be a teacher, as he is finishing his doctorate in education as a teacher, and go and start teaching. So those are some of the things that we want to be able to, and you know, be of significance and impact in our country, where your truth becomes your worth, not your earnings, not how much, not your possessions, where your truth becomes your worth. And I know that today people talk much about let your networks become your net worth. As good as that may sound, sometimes it may sound so transactional that I will keep my relationship with Professor Mile because if that's my network, that will create my worth. You know, because I'm going to earn, I'm going to get. And thankfully in NSG, we don't get paid. This is you know, a role of love. This is something that, again, it is a blessing for me, an opportunity and a privilege, because I am able, even with some of the fears, having had a difficult journey and a difficult time in the public sector, as most of you would know, in Transnet, in PRASA, but to be able to still give and identify something where I am able to, you know, still serve And that is what the platform of NSG has been able to actually, provide for me. And where we continuously are driven by our internal convictions that say, even when it looks so attractive, even when what somebody is offering and putting on the table looks so attractive, and maybe I don't have to work one day after, today, where I can say, no, thank you. Because what you are living for is beyond that just somebody giving you and buying you. Because again, our self-worth cannot be through what somebody places, that check, that envelope that somebody places in front of us, where we are able to walk freely and sleep at night. Because like anything in life, true to form, true to nature, true to God, nothing goes uncovered. It will always, anything we give in life, we will always get back, one way or the other, not from the source where we gave through, but it will always come back. And so those are some of the things where we need to be very clear with our goals when we are given these responsibilities. It must not just be for ourselves, but it must be driven by something bigger than that. I won't dwell in this because I just thought that I got this from the Colorado State University Puebla element. One of the things that I continuously drive myself is my personal development as a person, as a human being, alongside professional development. Personal development is very important because we live in a world with the atrocities that are carried on by human beings. We always have to wonder and ask ourselves, what drives us as human beings when some of the things that we end up doing. And so the importance of understanding self, of developing self and saying beyond the technical knowledge, that is not what's going to define you. The wellness, the well-being, you as an individual, there's how do you look after your emotional needs? And that becomes very important when you look at yourself holistically and how emotionally are you grounded? What grounds you when those challenging times face us, whether it is a difficult assignment, whether it is difficult financial times, how do we ground ourselves emotionally? So that continuous self-development and coaching is something that we need to hone in. Financial, management. How do we plan? How do we actually make sure that that dimension in our lives is taken care of? And it is not just, elaborate success, but being able to meet our needs. Because again, wealth, we all can be wealthy because wealth is when our needs are actually within our, our means. So these are some of the things when you look at ourselves holistically, because this element of lack of financial grounding as well is one of the things that sometimes can trip us and create certain, where you can be influenced. And so it is very important to be self-grounded, even in the elements of finance. Socially, how do we show up within our families, our relationships? What do we build our relationships on? What drives us as human beings? When we walk into the workplace, do we only build relationships with those who are senior to us because we want to belong in certain environments? And those whom we believe are lesser than us, we do not give them any time. When people send us emails, when people approach us, do we respond respectfully to those, especially those who are looking for guidance from us? So those are some of the things where significance is when we impact people in many ways and many small ways. It doesn't have to be elaborate things. The spiritual element of self, what grounds you spiritually? And this is one element for me as a person. In some of the very trying times, some of them very public in this country, that actually held it together. was that spiritual grounding, where in all those difficulties was to remain focused, and other people find something else. The question is that in these trying times, in these times of uncertainties, we're moving towards elections. In the public sector, some of us are anxious. Are we going to be here beyond 29th of May? And we are gripped by fear. We're not taking decisions, and we do not get driven by the fact that I will do my role day in, day out, because I will remain spiritually grounded, because I am here. There's a higher cause. And no one on earth is a God. There is only one God. And yet we allow people to treat us and act over us as gods. Those are some of the things that we need to unpack ourselves holistically and look at occupationally. When you set your goals, what are your targets? In the roles where you are in, what are you hoping to achieve? Physically, we need to look after ourselves physically. One of the things that we also end up neglecting in some of the difficult roles is neglecting our health. We cannot achieve all the other elements of our personal development, of our self-development, if we are unhealthy. It actually is meaningless at the end of the day, because you will not be able to show up. You won't be able to go and be at your occupation. You won't be able to go and earn your financially if you're not healthy. So what are your goals physically in making sure that you look after your health? It is very important. So we need to be holistic human beings. Intellectually, how do you continuously stimulate ourselves? You've got your qualification, you've got this role, you've got this position, but how do you continuously grow yourself, yes, professionally, but also personally, and continuously challenge yourself? What are your goals around all these dimensions this year? Have you sat down and become intentional and saying, this year, this is my goal emotionally. This year, this is my financial goal. And your financial goal may be, I will save so much out of my salary this year. My financial goal will be, my son is in matric this year. I will be able to at least take him to university this year. So those are some of the things that are very important, so that we don't live life directionless. And it can also be one-dimensional, where it is about chasing our positions at all costs. Even if it means I trample on people socially, I have no relationships because I will leave corpses at all costs for me to be in the position that I'm targeting to be. I will go and do, and cut trees. And that is the environmental part of it. And environmental is, yes, about our climate and making sure that we are not only living for now, but what is the planet we are living for our children. It is also talking about the environment we are in. Whom do we keep around us? The people who we allow to influence us, who do we keep? So those are some of the things that actually, when you then ground self, so that when you show up, you can show up as a person who is seen to be clearly driven by purpose and can be someone of significance. I've shared the slide in our induction, board induction, when we discussed the public sector, where in the wake of our democracy, the PFMA, the Companies Act, the King Code, there is no reason why our public sector cannot be at the height of excellence and competence and service delivery, be at its core and impeccable. Because this is a leadership, this is a government, when it took power, had committed to this, and we started seeing it, where we are driven by leading ethically, where we are driven by values-based leadership, and make sure that we will subscribe to the highest forms of governance, where we manage our conflicts, we manage our independence. And so these are some of the things where when we are on these boards need to actually grip us, because we've also got a regulatory framework and that supports and supports us in actually making sure that we lead and lead impeccably. And so it demonstrates that we've got these frameworks, but when people who come within these structures do not live up to this, it shows we can have our laws and regulations in black and white. We've got the most clearly defined laws and policies in our country. There is no reason why we cannot have the highest growth in our economy, high employment rate, low crime levels, because we have defined these for ourselves. But how are we not achieving this? It is the people who must then come and actually roll this up. Right now, the 2024 Edelman Trust Barometer has released their global report, where over time, you remember that most governments were the ones where citizens would look up to, because there was always little trust on business. Sadly, that pendulum has swung, where governments are trusted less than people trust NGOs, than people trust business. South Africa was amongst the countries which is noted to have a very high trust deficit. Government is seen to be, and this is on the report, by the way. You can find this report. It's also available on the web, where it is written that government is seen to be far less competent and ethical than business. And we all know that 10 years ago, that was not the case. People felt our government is the one that will deliver for us, and that was trusted. Today, that pendulum has swung. Leaders are not trusted to tell the truth. It's in the report. Societal concerns are on the rise, and we have seen it. We've seen, societal protests. And so we are the ones in the leadership roles who have a responsibility of how do we turn this around. So it can't be that it is only business that will be seen to be the one that will impact society positively, when there are government organizations who are there, can work in partnership. We are not saying it must only be on the shoulders of government, but it has to be a collaborative role. In the continent, we had to define, what do we want as Africans? Because all our countries, South Africa being one of them, speak towards driving an agenda that in 2013, as Africans, we came together and said, no Western country must tell us what we want. We can build the Africa that we want. The average age of our demographics in the continent is 19. But we all know that the leadership across the continent is between 60 and 70 years. Yet more than 60% of the people who live in our continent are less than 30 years old. So are we solving for the future if we are allowing this kind of a setup? So again, the Africa we want, we've got 39 years to go to 2063. It started in 2013 and it was a 50-year plan. Are we close? Probably with the Africa trade area, we are starting to see some wins. There are some pockets of excellence. We need to focus and build on what is working and not be gripped by the areas that are actually not working. So are we running behind some of the wins that we are seeing? There was a time when we had about more than 4 women presidents in the continent. At the moment, the ones that I can still recall is 2 in Ethiopia and in Tanzania. Is this the Africa we want? So being in the public sector, we are given the responsibility of saying, my role, whether I'm in some of the transport SOEs where we are gripped with some of the logistics challenges, whether I am in the police where there's crime and corruption, whether I'm in social services where there's inequality and poverty. The poverty line at the moment is below, majority of South Africans live below the poverty line, which is 1,053 Rand per month. And we know that some of us and some of the leaders we see even put it on social media and rub it in the faces of those who are poor and cannot afford some of the lifestyle that we lead. And these are some of the things to say, if we are in the public sector as leaders, what do we then wake up every day and say, this is what I am solving for? We know the slogan of Brand SA, which says, play your part. So what is the part that you are playing among some of the challenges that are there? And sometimes challenges help us to be able to create opportunities and solve. So when you are where you are, whichever SOE, board or executive you are in, every morning you wake up, what are you solving for? So as I move towards the end, I am guided by, again, one of the books that I'm reading by Eckhart Tolle, and most of you will know Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. One of the books, Awakening to Your Life's Purpose, and I'm sharing one of the things he says where he says, awakening is a shift in consciousness in which thinking and awareness separate. For some people, it can be a sudden shift from an adverse incident. I shared one where early in my life, I had that incident, which was very public in this country, and it shifted the kind of human being I became. It shifted the kind of leader I was going to be, and a number of other defining moments and challenges that I've had to face. As I'll say, that the scars I have actually been a gift, because at every moment when I had to wake up and, wear my, big pennies and move forward, I've had to say, what do I do differently? So for others, it can be a sudden incident that actually force you to reflect and say, what is the bigger thing in life? Some people, it might be a near-death incident. Others, it's a gradual process where, even with the work like the NSG does, where you continuously listen to the leaders that NSG keeps bringing, where you start saying, what is the shift? What is shifting in me? Where it's a gradual process of transformation. So my wish for you is that with the work that the NSG is doing, and Principal Busani Ngabeni, I've had the honor of working with him in a leadership program, where in that leadership program, after we had finished it, we were forced to say, so as a leader, how do you contribute to a good society? Because we all want to be part of a good society. But are we all ready to lift and roll our sleeves and make it the good society? I thank you.
What a powerful nudge, Sister Cindy, our senior fellow. What an authentic nudge, awakening based on these stories and the science behind them, of the truth towards significance. Let me not say too much. A small surprise. I did say Principal will join us, but he'll tell us where he is and with whom. Over to you, Principal.
Hey, good morning to you all. Thanks, Program Director. We are here, Cindy Koyana. We are with another Cindy here, Cindy Chikunga, Minister of Transport, with the chairpersons of boards of the entities of the Department of Transport. So we listening to you attentively from where you are, joining all the other colleagues who are joining online. Thank you very much for that intervention, much appreciated. We will share the input with all the chairpersons who are here together with the minister. In fact, Cindy, I think about 7 or so, it could be less, of the boards that are here have gone through the energy induction program, and you did interact with them, so they are part of the community of practice. So thank you very much once again for that. We will mute and listen in the background, and please continue, Millie. Thank you very much for that.
Thanks so much, Principal, and our warmest greetings to Minister over there, our former Deputy Minister, the boards, all the best with the session. So, thanks. We just
Thank you,
transition.
Principal, and we recognize Minister there as well, and the board chairs. Thank you so much.
So on our chat, we encourage you to please say your thoughts, ask your questions. And I did say earlier, to be lovely, not just to hear questions, but also what it is that you relate to, what it is that is a similarity, what is a lesson, what kinds of insights are you finding resonate with what you've heard, what is an awakening that this powerfully authentic story relatably triggers in you. What is your X? What are you solving for? I love that question, Cindy. So for now, I see Hoshea saying a very, very big thank you for a timely and beautifully presented Jenny with thoughts. Let me know, please, team, if there are hands that we may wish to allow to bring forth their questions, their comments. I don't see any at the moment. And whilst we're doing that, maybe just to also say on my part, I just found the values component featuring right at the top, together with meaning, choices, with decisions, and whatever the spaces we occupy, the professionalism, the expressions of who we are and who we want to be like in relation with others, to be a lovely anchoring point. And of course, the big gems of leadership and governance with a big history that we dare not leave behind, that shapes our context, and when we strive for transformation to situate it in not just the self, but the good, the greater good. Just still checking if we have any more hands or any more inputs from participants. Again, whilst we do that, in our induction boards, thanks for making that one slide resurface nicely in that way. It's one thing for certain codes of good practice, certain values, certain principles to be coded, to be spelled out. It's another for them to be made to work and to be made to show up, an expression that you have used, Cindy, showing up. And I was hoping with the participants we have on this conversation, we could hear what is walking, what sounds in the walking and the talking do we hear that are drawn from the code, even the Constitution. These documents, these guidelines don't write themselves. They are drawn from our experiences and the futures that we want to build. So if there are thoughts in that direction, I'd love to hear. Madam Pindile, I recognize you, our DDG, maybe also to allow you to step in, even though you have something to do specifically later on.
Thank you. Good morning. Thanks, Cindy, for your sharing. I think listening to your journey, or where you come from, how you arrived, this is very remarkable. And I appreciate that as a female professional, you're able to share so much and guide us in other things that we need to be aware of. I take to heart one of the things that you shared about the importance of making sure that we're aligned to the vision of the organizations that we partner ourselves, we offer our services through, that it is morally and ethically aligned to our value system. That is also important. I take the fact that we need to also remember, especially us as public servants, remembering the servant, being a servant, that it's important for us to be a servant and remember why we're here, and not to only think about us, think about the others that come after us. So yeah, that's part of the key takeaways. I appreciate your sharing, and we always enjoy having you here at the NSG, sharing your wisdom with us. Thank you for now. I know I'm coming back later.
Thanks so much, Pindile. On our chat, we see colleague Dr. Peterson, Johnny, you say, this is the best masterclass for me. I suppose it means the best by far. We've been attending quite a number so far. And he says he finds a combination of ethics and profession is one of those compelling challenges for us today to have to find that synergy. Madam Napolo on the chat, what a wonderful presentation. If she finds humane presentation, authentic, bring who you are, and this is to every space you occupy. So she attended the board program in 2022 and found you to be inspiring even then. Madam Gilbert, I can see that clearly there. Wants to say, oh, there's a Terry Johnson here who'd like to say something. So with the panel admin at the back, if you could allow, there are two names on one chat. So there's Terry Johnson in the signature, but the name shows as Gilbert. So if you're able to come through to say what you'd like to say together with it's Dr. Connor, if you could be allowed, the admin can allow you to have you speak, it would be great for us to hear from you. So what we need to do, colleagues in the admin, cross the two names please into this space so we can hear from them direct. I'm just following through quickly, another reading. And there's an anonymous person who says this has been very enlightening. And thank you, Ms. Cindy, for sharing your leadership journey with us. Okay, share how one can continually work on themselves in trying to build a personal brand. So that's one question so far that has come through. Please, may you share how one can continually work on themselves in trying to build a personal brand. Maybe we start with that one once we cross over the two participants to ask their questions. Over to you, Madam Cindy.
Thank you. Yeah, so I guess the issue around personal brand, I've always said that, over time, one just continued to do what came easy, the focus on growing the number of Black women CAs in the country, raising my hand for some of the difficult assignments and also difficult boards and, some of the difficult roles. And that is how unaware, as people say, somehow a brand got created in that way. So when I look back, the elements really, number one, were showing up and showing up properly. And being able to raise your hand, because it's also around, we all want this good society, we all want something that works, but none of us are willing to roll our sleeves and say, I'll be the first one to actually get this done and lead the way in that manner. So that has been one of the the things that have stuck with me, and working hard. And in that working hard, it is honing in on those elements that you know sometimes may not be your strength, and continuously work on them. And getting a coach. I've had a coach for most of my professional career, and not one. In some instances, I've had two, because I've also known that I'm not perfect. So I've continuously had to, work with someone where I can be transparent, authentic, and them guide me. That has been something I've invested in, even when my employers were not ready to do that for me. I didn't wait for them to get myself a coach and and a mentor. It's quite common nowadays to have a mentor. Even organizations promote it. Even within our own organization in AWCA, we now have formal programs of mentorship. But again, in addition to that, that journey of self, when you wake up in the morning, and I've had the practice of waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And yes, sometimes it has been to work, but most of the time it has been to just spend time on my own with my God and reflect and self-reflect and ask myself, how did I show up yesterday? And how can I show up better today? So the work on self continues. It never stops. And yes, it is professional. It's saying, where am I? Am I able to do the work, or do I need to take additional courses, additional professional education, so that I know what I am actually doing? When you come, the normal, when we come to boards, have we prepared? Do we, immerse ourselves in the stuff that we've raised our hands and we said, I'm available for this, with excellence, competence, and quality in what we do. Dr. Len Connor, who's on this line, has walked with me, and there were moments when maybe I would not have showed up the manner he would have expected me to. And with him being a doyen of governance, has had conversations with me, and where you are open to learning. Do you have people you look up to whom you do not, what do they call it, cancel, when they've called you to tell you that, we're not so sure there. We're not sure, of where you are, or where you are showing up. And so those are some of the things. It is not a perfect science and a linear science. It is being open to learning on a regular basis and always doing that self-reflection. And for me, that wheel on self-development is a wheel I got from one of my psychologists, became coach, and we've been using it for the last 5 years. Beginning of the year, what are my goals on all of those elements? And occupational is saying, what do I need to do this year? I mean, we are in private equity. I've always called myself a blend, a CA, investment banking, private equity, and all of those things, where I just used to be a CFO, audit. And when I went into that environment, I had to learn, I had to immerse myself. When I started a business in contract mining, I had to go and study. Terry Johnson on the line. We're in a contract mining business together. I had to register for an intro in mining course at Wits. I have a course in mining. So it's continuously saying, how do I better myself? And not always coming up as if you know all the answers all the time. So yeah, it's not a perfect science, but it's a continuous hunger to learn.
What a lovely, comprehensive response there, Cindy. That consistency, wanting to sharpen the craft, as it were, and not for self gain necessarily, but knowing that it is, again, to serve the greater good. So I'm just checking if we're able to cross over. I see the message. Are you able to cross Dr. Connor into the space so he can speak, Bumi? And Terry as well. All right. In the meantime, lovely, lovely. That's good. So over to you, Doc. You're unmuted, but we could not hear you.
Thank you, Program Director. I'm Len Kona, and I've known Cindy for many, many years. Cindy Mabaso Koyana. I even attended her wedding. So she's done an awesome presentation today, and she's shared with us, and she is too shy to tell you that I'm a honorary woman. I am a member of the AWCA, and I've served as their faculty doing training for them over the past number of years. So I'm truly inspired by what Cindy had to say, but she's too humble in certain things. I would share with you how I interpret her success. So, Program Director, ladies and gentlemen, number one, she works hard. I think an essential ingredient for success is working hard. Number two, she has passion. She enjoys what she does, and she exudes confidence and commitment. So that's the second characteristic and quality that I admire in Cindy. Thirdly, despite all the accolades and the recognition, and she shared with you earlier her career path and what she's achieved, she remains humble. So if you want to succeed in life, so a third characteristic that accompanies Cindy and part and parcel of her gene is to remain humble and to care. Fourthly, Program Director, colleagues, she is somebody that thinks about issues carefully. She shared with you a moment ago that she gets up early to think about issues. So as a chartered accountant, one of the characteristics that we have is to be professionally skeptical, but to do it in a respectful manner. So when she receives information, she thinks about it and she thinks through the next 3 steps. Have I got all the information? Can I make a decision? What is omitted? What else do I need? Can I make this decision with conviction? Is the information that has been presented to me reliable? So she is professionally skeptical, and she is thinking a few steps ahead. And for her and the success that she's enjoyed since becoming a CA in 2002, she's lived her life with integrity and with purpose. So when we talk about purpose, she has reflected on, in this conversation, Program Director, colleagues, that she thinks about others, not only about herself, and the values that she shared with you, which is quite moving. And, you know, she asked the question earlier, how do you want to live your life? And she indicated that certain values are non-negotiable. And then she also asserted quite confidently that when you become uncomfortable with mediocrity, so one always needs to ensure that one lifts one's game and goes forward. And finally, what she hasn't told you is that if you want to become half as good as she is, then you have to read Malcolm Gladwell's book called The Outliers, which requires 10,000 hours of commitment. So, Program Director, friends, I'm delighted to say that Cindy Mabasa Koyana is a professional colleague. She's a friend. She's a sister. She's an inspiration, and I wish her well. Thank you.
Thank you for using this opportunity in such a fitting manner, Dr. Kona. And yes, that's just to complement some of the things that are perhaps implied. Cindy, in there's only perhaps so much you could select to say, but true to that beautiful disposition of an inquiring mind is also that humility. So we so happy that we could see. I counted 7. Maybe I broke down some, but maybe there are others that are subsumed together of the qualities, dispositions that Dr. Kwana characterized you as having.
Thanks, Dr. Kwana. I'm humbled. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we also have Verishka. I suppose that's Terry also by another name. Over to you.
And I've just been load shared, but at least you can see me. Unfortunately, I'm connected still.
Okay. Verishka Gilbert, if you may unmute and let's hear from you, please. I suspect that's Terry as well in that same connection. Right. In the meantime, there's a lovely chat that says, it's a question, how do we get hold of you, Cindy? The investment holding component seems to be very appealing. So this is perhaps for direct communication, direct access regarding AIH. I wonder if in your slides, excuse me, there is a signature about your contact details that you may add, so it's easy for others to get hold of you direct.
Okay, I'll add an email on the slides.
Thank you.
Did you want me to respond to it now, Prof?
No.
Yeah, direct. Okay.
Yeah, I'm glad you will finish the email address. Thank you. Yeah, more and more gratitude for sharing your journey, and it's from Andile, the importance of mastering leading self and showing up with humility, and that seems to be one of those recurring themes, Cindy, that in your journey, and as evidenced by your big friend, the way that you are known, the way that what you say is expressed. There are those thickened narratives of your life that are the mainstay of the truth of your leadership journey. Thoroughly enjoyed, this is Rebecca, this session, and inspired to show up in my role. What a lovely sentiment of inspiration, Cindy. All right. If Terry is in the room, we're still buying a bit of time for you to unmute. I see we have Verishka. So whoever is behind the name, let's hear from you, please.
I think, Prof, sorry, just to comment on that point that was shared around self-mastery. It's a very important one because, again, when we are in some of these roles, mastering ourselves, and it's on all those different elements, how we manage our emotions, manage our health. One of the challenges that we all, face sometimes, and I know I said something on the physical, I've always said that when you come across as if there's an element of your life that is in your control, that you're not mastering, sometimes, it doesn't portray the right image, those that are in your control. There are sometimes things that are out of our control, and we can, find ways of how we manage those. But issues of self-mastery, time management, because we expect this of others. So for me, it is always about what you expect from others. You need to lead the way and show it first. We can't, as one of my philosophy gurus will say, that you can't keep barking instructions at people and yet you are unable to actually get the things done. You need to lead the way. So it's a big element. I must say, from what actually drives me in leading with purpose. Be intentional, and people must see it in you. We can't demand things from our teams, and yet we cannot demonstrate them.
Tying back to being truthful. So Terry says, cannot get the audio right. So just wanted to say thank you for your role, Cindy, in her life. That's what she says. And we're so happy to see that come through in some of our participants here. And I suppose, Cindy, if you may say something here, what do you see, using Terry's comment as an example, in others as a result of the work you do? Perhaps still, yes, with that humility and that modesty, we appreciate that you might not make a big, let's say, narrative out of, this is what I've done for so many people. But in general, what kind of trend have you seen in the people that have stepped into your space and have been influenced by the work that you do and the leadership that you provide, the collegiality and so on?
Yeah, it's always a difficult one. I always laugh at as Priscilla Mabilane at Sasol, who was the BPSA. Priscilla was the first treasurer of AWCA. Mary Vilagazi, the CEO now, First Rand, she had to coerce her to launch AWCA Cape Town. She was still with PwC in Cape Town and then went to Momentum at the time. And again, so I always say to them, and I say the same thing to Funeka, I can't say you guys, we're my mentees. You guys have gone and done bigger things. And again, it's probably what drives me. It's always being able to say, we need to find fulfillment when we see those we lead end up doing things that are better than what we've done. That's basically one of the things. And also it is being driven sometimes by just saying you need to see potential in everyone and work with that, because everybody has potential. And if you've got just one area of influence by being on a board, how do you make sure transparently, openly, following governance, do you make sure that by you being on that role, a number of people will be empowered? So it's basically just some of those things that I can talk about, and also the AWCA. We talk about, we've just quantified it. We've given 149 bursaries to Black women who are now chartered accountants. We now run leadership programs, as we discussed, the importance of not just numbers, but the quality of the CA. I mean, we now have programs we run with Duke University, Fordham University in the US. We run now leadership programs. Number of Black women CAs have become entrepreneurs and don't stay in normal corporate environments. In the early days, we used to run our workshops around accounting statements. There's a new accounting statement, how, and come together, those who are battling to unpack this accounting statement, called Dr. Len Kona to help us. Most of our CAs now are not in that space. Some go and run their own businesses. So we've got an entrepreneurs forum that we partner with other corporates in running the entrepreneurs forum. So those are some of the things that we've actually, gone and done, and we've had to quantify them into solid, numbers. As we said, in AIH, 10% of our distributions are meant to go to AWCA. As shareholders, 15 years down the line, it was the first time last year to be able to declare dividend to our shareholders. But over years, we probably, even before we could take a dividend, we gave almost 15 million to AWCA for their programs without us taking a cent in the last 15 years.
So earlier you spoke about not sitting passively and watching things go by and hoping there'll be transformation. And what you've just said here shows us how your passion, another word you use, your engagement has found pathways and affected in that big way to different degrees, different lives, different situations. So thank you for sharing them. This anonymous here is saying, as a fresh graduate from the Northwest University, could be any other university for that matter, has a degree in a specific field, but right now has not found employment, finds it humiliating that he or she has lost that passion. Yeah, even in so many endeavors. What do you say to this kind of sentiment? And imagine so many other voices of unemployed graduates who don't want to lose the passion, want to serve and want to be given, but this is where they find themselves.
Yeah, that's a tough one because I guess the issue of unemployment is real, in our country, especially for graduates. So the issue of unemployed graduates, when we look at, in the finance space, we work with FASET, the finance SETA. We've been able to roll out a number of, programs for unemployed graduates. And I think there's a big role for our SETAs that they have managed to play, but that I know is at a low level. I'm not sure what level the colleague who's asking the question, is at. So I think there is again an issue of, do we really not have as a country, or it is how we are managing our resources? I think for me, that is the part that makes it painful, not just as South Africa, but as a continent. Do we really not have enough for everybody? That is the question. And us who sit in the public sector and preside over large amounts of budget, the question is, can we put hand to heart and say the money has gone where it is meant to go, in the quantums it is meant to go in? So if you have to, build something that is meant to be 100,000 and you end up paying 2 million for, and I'm using small amounts because we know that we've played with big amounts. So that is a sad part, because truth is we can afford to look after our people as a country. However, working with what we have now, that is why there are some pockets of excellence that are working. There are some departments that are rolling out programs, because again, there is so much that when I spoke about the gaps around indeed logistics challenges, education challenges, there is so much work to be done in South Africa. Yes, sometimes we look for jobs, but there's so much work. For a while, there are many times I was unemployed and I did work. Because again, we are a world and a country that is very disposable. We dispose of people. I remember after Transnet, I had a challenge in finding work, a job rather, in South Africa, because people go, no, don't touch that one. So for a while, but that was the time I did work. And I showed up doing work because there was a lot of work to be done. Our country, we have become an unclean country. There is so much. And I know it's painful, because if you do not have means to even go to where you need to do that work done, but around us, there's a lot of work that we need to do. We live in filthy places, and it's easier said than done. I know sometimes it may not land well, with some people, but sadly, there is a lot of work to be done in South Africa. I serve on an education foundation, Zenex Foundation. For some reason, for a long time, our country dealt away with assistant teachers. I'm so happy that that is back. Because again, for a while, we had people who had a passion to teach, even if they didn't have a qualification, who would go and support in the classroom a teacher. Where in 60 plus classes, surely a teacher can't see everything that is happening to a child. And we've been on the ground where you walk into a classroom and observe, and there'll be that one child who's not even bothered what's going on, is not even committed. And a class goes by and you ask the teacher, did you see there was a child? And that is when a role of assistant teachers came in. There's so much work to be done in South Africa. So indeed, the issue of unemployment is very painful because we shouldn't have the levels of unemployment that we have because there's so much work to be done. The township across the road here, Alex, is so dirty. That is work to be done. But yes, sometimes we need to be able, even stipends, we could formalize even those car directors that direct cars in our traffic lights because we don't have electricity and work around it. Instead, we all hoot at them and call them, these are the boys of Nyawubi. Someone could collect those guys and do something with them. There's so much work to be done in South Africa. We all just want to be paid all the time for things to be done. And I know it may land crude and harsh, but this is something that our government, probably working with NGOs, could identify people who are doing work and be able to then formalize it into something.
Like you shared earlier on, how we define success. This is perhaps another space, that questioning, that inquiry. How do we define work? How do we define being meaningfully occupied? Sensitivity is a matter, and I'm saying it here as I'm thinking it, that it's a multi-layered issue, one of those X's in your diagram. And in one angle, or from one angle as the NSG, we could have a conversation of this nature where we have, even for awareness, the kinds of networks that exist, the kinds of examples of forms of work, whilst we are on a journey to a certain kind of definition of the passion that perhaps we initially had. So it doesn't have to be one without the other, or we don't have to wait for a perfect set of circumstances to come along before we step into a space that gives us dignity. Earlier, you, not you, but the testimony we got from Dr. Connor mentioned, well, okay, it was you, the word coaching. Yeah, I think we crisscrossed between what was said about you and what you said. At the NSG, you'll also be happy to know we do offer within the public service as part of the in-service education, training, development, various permutations of coaching at awareness level, coaching for leadership development, what it is to look forward to, and how we can ready ourselves, because it's a mind shift as well that's required, which is not quite the same as the kind of young person who might come to you and say, hey, Cindy, please be my coach, or please be my mentor. Then there are the actual services with compatibility with certified professionals like you are, who can then be matched to individuals, to teams and organizations, depending on what it is that needs to be supported, in what form to achieve what kind of milestone or element feature in the learning journey. So I'm happy that you also reinforce that it is, yes, part of our awareness that we don't have to beat ourselves down too hard, but at the same time, reach out, know that we are imperfect, and we continue the journey with the assistance of others. You also, I'm touching now on something that creates this paradox. So unemployment on the one hand, and need, to earn a living. Yet you caution, Cindy, against this materialism, this seeing success as nothing but accumulation of possession. So historically, we may have a sketch of how it is that we came to be where we are, but how do we loosen ourselves and detach from being content without, and meaningfully happy without this association with the material? Is there a starting point? And now there are values involved there. Could it be a circle of friends that we keep that perhaps gravitates us more and more that way? Could it be maybe limitations of not knowing what else success could look like?
Yeah, it's a deep subject and a deep topic. And I think for me, I got to it spiritually. Other people can go through it, in different ways. As you say, so it can be from outside in, where people share, or it can be from inside out. It is journeys of adversity, where you start asking the meaning of all of it. At the end of the day, what is the meaning of everything? When you lose loved ones, when you know that, life, we don't control it at the end of the day, and yet we seem to be in so much control. So it's a deeper conversation. As I said, I through psychology, but also I'm a student of self-development, spirituality. I take time off retreats where sometimes just get out of the bus of things, and understand your worth cannot be defined by these little things, because when you've seen what really matters, as I said, some people, they get to it quicker, others it takes time. Others, maybe they're born in an environment where family values have taught them to ground themselves in, that way. So it's not an easy one, Prof, but it is a journey of always saying, why am I here? Why do I do what I do? And what it ends up doing is also channeling your energies. What do I put my energies in? What really matters more? Sometimes it comes with maturity as you get older. Maybe when you're still young, we're also quite, what's the word? Maybe negligent, and we just live life haphazardly. So it's many elements that actually start coming together that drive that. But hopefully, with the kind of work that we are starting to see, leadership work, like the work you are doing as NSG, work that we are seeing being done. I mean, my kids will laugh at life orientation, and take it lightly. And so those are some of the things. How do we early on ground certain values in how we live life as human beings? But sadly, again, there's that paradox where we drive these things to the school, and yet outside, kids are seeing a different lifestyle being lived. So it's a big responsibility. I think as a sum up on that, one of the things I've already said is that the world obviously is built by different countries, different nations. Nations are built by societies. Societies are built by families, and families are built by individuals. So it starts with the core, it starts with the individual and what we do within our families. Hence, again, one of my sore points in our country is seeing how we keep demolishing and destroying the Black family with our lifestyles. We used to blame apartheid and say apartheid caused dysfunctional families. We had fathers who were not present. Whatever the reason may be, there could be reasons. But again, it's still the same thing where I make you responsible for my life, and yet it's my life. So at the end of the day, I make the choices. We've all been through a lot of pain. That's why even in one family, sometimes you'll find that some people come out differently and yet use the same pain of why I became like this. So there's an element of the environment, there's an element of the family values, but there's an element of self. How do you show up amidst all the challenges that we have? In the end, we've got our choices, as difficult situations as they may be.
And amongst those choices, the last comment, we need a lot of Cindy's in South Africa. We can choose to be that Cindy where there is none, or where there are few, and create more and more of those critical masses towards the mindset.
Yeah, I mean, Prof, we
mindset.
speak about ESG these days for companies. Companies must be socially conscious, they must be responsible. But who run companies? Let's start with the socially conscious and responsibility. Do we make responsible choices? Do we act responsibly as individuals? We outsource those things to organizations, to governments. But it starts with the person.
Now, this is meant to be a conversation, and I acknowledge, this is my reading, that you have induced a lot of reflection, a lot of innermost questioning. And it's not going to stop here. It needs to be connecting to what it is that we define as our purpose, and how we then make sure that we choose the best of such forms of purposes as they can be, and put in the work required to live true to such, for the kind of significant impact that we would love to be part of and to see. So I'm checking one more time from our team behind the scenes. If you see a hand that I might not see, is there somebody who wishes to come through? Okay. So impactful it is, Cindy, you must know, this kind of laying bare your thinking, what informs it, your journey, and how it keeps being shaped, and the choices that you make to shape it, and how you respond to various sets of circumstances, and the mainstays in between, where shift or no shift, this is the kind of stability you feed from and you nurture. So if this is okay with you, just checking if there isn't, yeah, I've not missed anybody. I've just checked one more time. Salute is one last word that I see here. A big salute to you. So may I call on you, colleague DDG Pindile? Maybe.
Prof, just one last point for the,
yes.
I know I had attempted to answer this one, but just that it is confirmed, it is a fresh graduate. We're saying, I'm not sure whether this is at what level, but she does say she's a fresh graduate from Northwest University, holding a degree in public governance with politics and public administration. Again, one of the things we decided to do as AWC at some point, I know it became difficult because we're in the area of financial management. We raised our hands to go to the municipalities in our townships where how can we help? At the time, we're thinking they don't have skills on financial management, but obviously some of us were sent packing because now we were bringing financial order. So that was not needed. But maybe in this case, I think the young graduate can raise their hand and go to You know, it's public administration. Where can they say, I'm available to, you know, help? You know, and sometimes we want to pitch high, no harm in pitching high. Never, you know, dim your light in where you will land, but you start somewhere. So even if just walking to a municipality with your public administration or somewhere, again, easier said than done, but that is how I normally advise young people in my family who are always saying they don't have something to do. Where I can find something for them to do, even if it's not paying, I'll try and lead them in some of the areas based on their line of training initially, but sometimes outside of their line of training. And sometimes it ends up being a calling. There might be a reason why they end up even raising their hand for something outside of their calling. Only seek for higher guidance. It's tough, I understand.
Thanks for coming back to that one, Cindy. Yeah, as I say, I think it is proper that we have a kind of open conversation with the youth development focus and bring in different kinds of angles of awareness, as well as practical examples of where such walking an interest, walking a passion could feature, could manifest. Thank you once more, Cindy, for reflecting together with us. DDG, over to you.
Thanks, Millie. Thanks so much, Cindy, for sharing. As I said earlier, there's a lot that you've shared that is inspiring every one of us that have attended. The importance that, you know, success is not the end goal. We need to be significant in how we live our lives and how we give back, knowing that there's always something that we need to give to our communities. This is the kind of message I'm getting from what you've shared. Importance of leading yourself before you can even start leading others. Knowing my purpose, what is my purpose, why am I here? In everything, where you're placed, doesn't matter where you are. There's a reason why you're there, and you can be able to influence the environment that you're in a positive way, making it better because you were just there. It reminds me of my favorite verse, you know, in the Bible that talks about whatever your hand find it to do it with all your might, as if you're serving the Lord. It's about giving your best always, so that it doesn't matter who's looking. You are always giving your best. And this is a motivation, reminding us as public servants that we're here to serve our people. So we need to give our best and make sure we're always at the top of our game. I like what you talked about, that when you came in, it was about the competence. It was not just people being given jobs. You had to work for it. You had to work to earn it. You had to show that you went to school, you have your qualification, but you're not just given the jobs. It was because of the caliber of the people that were there, that are now able to be the kind of leaders that we need in this country. So it's a challenge to all of us that we need to be the best of the best while we're in the public service, and make sure that we give the best so that our citizens benefit from that. We want to thank you for availing yourself to this lecture, call it a lecture, call it a masterclass, sharing how to live a purposeful life and be able to give in the public service. We want to thank all our participants, those who've asked questions, those who were in here and appreciating the lessons. And we know that a lot of people will take this and apply it. We know it's also on YouTube, so those that might have missed or joined in late, they can always go back to YouTube and find this talk and be able to listen to it. Please share with others as well so they can have the exposure. We know some of you shared your link with others, so we do have people who've got the same device name Yes, that's how they got motivated. That's why they were sitting here, they were sharing and asking others to join in and appreciate that. We appreciate everyone that has attended. Also want to thank the team in the backgrounds that have made this possible for setting up. We also thank our principal for coming up with the concept and helping us to share this information with you. We also want to say to those that are joining us for the first time as the NSG, check out our website. We always look out even on the social networks, the X and Facebook. So you see what it is that we offer as a school, even on thought leadership. I want to thank everyone. May you enjoy your day further. It's the end of our masterclass. Thank you so much.
Thanks, DDG. Thank you so much, Kindile. It was good to see you as well. Thanks for the opportunity. And thanks, Prof, and thanks to the principal. But most
Thank
importantly,
you.
to the attendants who,
Mm.
took their time and gave me the opportunity to share.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.